So a very warm welcome to all the esteemed panel today on the platforms of IIJSA, that is International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis. Myself, Varun Mansali, is the co-convener of IIJSA, and today we have, we will discuss on a very important topic, which is terror financing and money laundering to fuel the insurgency. Even after abrogation of Article 370, this is a very pertinent issue, which is very pertinent and very significant at this time also, that where is the financing coming for the terror which is going on in the valley. And for that, we have esteemed guests today with us. And I'm very pleased to say that the whole platform of IIJSA has been started by Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dheman, who is behind this whole platform and who is the convener of IIJSA. And the basic motive behind IIJSA is to have unbiased analysis on topics which needs to have unbiased opinion, and those opinions and those analysis should go to the government also, that these solutions can be there of such issues which is the need of the hour. So I request Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dheman to please take us forward, and please take over, sir. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Varun. Thank you for your introduction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the portals of IIJSA Jammu, which is a think tank in Jammu and Kashmir. And we are committed to giving unbiased opinions and do academic research into the actual happenings and not the way they are reported elsewhere in the country after being deformed and some kind of corruptions which is taking place inside those. So today, before we go on to it, I want to tell you something very interesting story. The moment I posted the links of this particular thing and with an introduction, there's a WhatsApp group with me, which contains people from POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan, and lots of diaspora, which is already settled in US, Canada, UK, and elsewhere in Europe, also part of it. Unfortunately, wonderful. I wouldn't say wonderful, but it's a bit of an acrimonious debate started, which was very interesting. I thought I would share with you before we go further. The first participant was from US, who probably is ex-Pakistani, and he gave a wonderful explanation. He says, Brigadier, what are you talking? J&K was never part of India. Never. I said, yeah, what are you talking? Are you aware of history? Are you aware of geography? Are you aware of even the current affairs for that matter? So that's the kind of a funny kind of an incident that came up. The second thing that happened was Mr. Virendra Sharma is expected very soon. He's a member of parliament in UK Parliament. So he happened to point out to the BBC, in which they showed a map which was without the J&K, Indian map without J&K. And he, of course, spoke to the authorities in the BBC Corporation. Yes, Mr. Virendra Sharma is just joining in, and there was a whole lot of signature campaign against him by the Pakistani guys, saying that Virendra Sharma is a Labour MP who ought not have to have supported India by saying that India's J&K is a part of this thing. And then they started a signature campaign, and I guess about 1,500 people have already signed on it. So that sort of provoked my mind a bit. Then I also have started a signature campaign, giving all the details about what all happened in front of what all has happening in front of the High Commission in London. The kind of unruly behavior, it happened on 15th of August. Even the ladies were not spared, the Kashmiri ladies. And one of the Kashmiri ladies told me, she says, "Abhi tak to hame Kashmir se nikala hai, ab kya hame London se bhi nikaloge?" So this is the kind of a thing. ISI is sponsoring some kind of a narrative, and they are organizing people with lots of funding, etc., that they should go ahead and sort of do anti-India, anti-J&K some kind of a hate campaign about everybody who belongs to India or who claims to be an Indian citizen. So such like incidents happen today itself. So I thought that before we begin with, I should mention and make a reference to these. So Mr. Virendra Sharma is already here. Sir, the petition has already reached Boris Johnson. So far, in last 2 or 3 hours, I think we've already had about 37 signatures already, sir. And we've planned to have 10,000 signatures in favor of this. So that is already there. So no, this is the doing of the ISI of Pakistan, wherein they're using narco money, that the kind of narcotics that is being grown under the tutelage of ISI patrons. And they are the ones who are selling it to the rest of the world. So as it is, they're creating a problem for the world by virtue of growing and perpetrating the use of narcotics all over the world. And it is a well-known fact that the root of this narcotics is starting from Pakistan, Afghanistan, grown in Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into India, Bangladesh, and to Southeast Asia, and to the rest of the world. And all the money that is being earned by these people, that is almost a parallel economy of Pakistan. Same GDP as the entire GDP of Pakistan. So that much money they have. So they can afford to give it to the diaspora in the countries like US, Canada, UK or elsewhere in the Europe, and spend a lot of money and get a manufacturing campaign and spreading hate against Indians. So that is what they're doing. And as I told you earlier also, that during I think December 2019, I was in a seminar in Manekshaw Hall in New Delhi, where I very strongly purported that yes, why don't we also start some kind of a laboratory, information lab, wherein we also sort of firstly counter their narrative by exposing them with videos. And secondly, if required, we can also manufacture a kind of a media campaign wherein people start getting our views. And then somebody said, well, we can do it, but India is a poor country. We are not using any narco money. We are using the legitimate money. So where do we get it from? I said, okay, though it was though I'm an army guy, I shouldn't be suggesting this particular metaphor, but it is a metaphor nevertheless. I said, buy one Rafale less. You'll have 1,700 crores of money available. So this is a metaphor. I'm not going to advocate this kind by any standards. But if we can always find money if we have the will to do it. So that is the particular thing. So same thing what is happening in J&K. The hapless people are dying. Unfortunately, the guys who are the perpetrators, nothing happens to them. They are in well safe locations, in the air-conditioned locations, having best of everything. The children are perfectly parked elsewhere in the world, doing very good education, and all their assets all being looked after by somebody or the other. Whereas the hapless Kashmiri, whether it's from Jammu or from Srinagar or from any other part of J&K, Ladakh, or even Gilgit-Baltistan or POJK, they are the ones who are suffering. They are the ones who have been devoid of any kind of a prosperity, any kind of a livelihood, any kind of human rights, any kind of liberties, any kind of independence. So with this, all happening because some Ziaul Haq started Operation Topak, that okay, I cannot defeat India in a conventional warfare, so let me take on the bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. And let's promote our jihad or Ghazwa Hind philosophy in a manner that starts from Kashmir, goes on to Jammu, goes on to Punjab, Haryana, and then finally Delhi. And so much so their sight, if you all remember, like in 71 war or even 65 war, we had enough number of PWs telling us, hey, look, when the op order was given out and the plan was given to the soldiers, which is the normal practice, they would also say, okay, subah ka nashta Jaisalmer mein hoga, dopaher ka lunch Jaipur mein hoga, और जुम्मे की नमाज जामा मस्जिद में पढ़ी जाएगी, लाल किले में पढ़ी जाएगी. So these kind of things have already been coming. So that is how they made the narratives. Now we have to expose this particular ISI nexus, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. Like we had enough number of incidents wherein, like, there was an inter-border trade which was stopped later for this reason. There was somebody from Jammu, a trader, who would send some fruits to let's say, POJK. Let's say like modus operandi at that time, ED told us that suppose he sent the fruits for 10 lakh rupees consignment, but he showed it as a 50 lakhs consignment. So 50 lakhs came into the account of this guy. So he was told, okay, you were supposed to give you 10 lakhs, you keep 20 and give 30 to so-and-so, so-and-so. And that money goes into the valley for funding the terrorists. So similarly, they had another incident. They told us that they're establishing a travel agency in Srinagar, which says that we will conduct the travel itineraries. So they would have groups coming. So each group would pay $10,000 each. They might get $1 million. And then the clause is, in case you cancel this tour, the money will be forfeited. So obviously, the tour had to be cancelled. So money remains with the handler in Kashmir, Srinagar. And then he is told, okay, keep so much with you. That is your money. That's your reward. And this is the money can be distributed to so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And then there was an organized industry of stone pelting by the students. Or if some militant dies, the funeral procession, the rudalis, the sympathizers, nare lagane wale, so they would have some kind of a boli lagegi. Like it's a tender process. If somebody says I'll do it in 10 lakhs, somebody the next chap says 9 lakhs, so 9 lakhs gets the contract. So he's supposed to organize, let's say, 500 stone pelters, 20 rudalis, 1,000 people who are in the procession. So such like cases are there and plenty. So I would think today it is not my day, but we have esteemed panelists, we have esteemed speakers like Mr. Kuldeep Kunda. You all know he is a ex-DGP and a very, very accomplished officer with lots and lots of achievements to his credit and has done a wonderful job. And he also is a son of the soil who knows J&K backwards. So welcome, sir. I would request you to take on. But before that, I would also welcome Mr. Karnal Singh. He is again a very accomplished and very, very decorated police officer who's served entire India, and he has a very, very in-depth knowledge and very good hand on insurgencies, how they spread, how are they funded, how are they sort of perpetrated. So today we have these two very esteemed officers who will tell experiences, who will tell us what exactly happens, and of course they will also tell us how do we get rid of it. And I welcome the rest of the panelists, Mr. Jandayal, Mr. Anand, Mr. Virendra Sharma, Mr. Christie, Kanika, Shubham, Rajan, so people who would be asking questions to our esteemed panelists. So whatever comes to your mind, whatever doubts that you have, whatever confusions that you get, you please try and clarify with them after their spoken. Do a question answer session after Mr. Karnal Singh has finished. So I now request Mr. Kuldeep Kunda to kindly take the stage, sir. Kunda sir, please.
Thank you, Brigadier Dheman. I'm thankful to you for inviting me to this wonderful webinar, and especially the topic which has been chosen for discussion, because this is the one area, this is the gray area which has remained largely unaddressed in J&K. Whereas the security forces and the police have been doing a great job since last more than 3 decades now in controlling the terrorism levels in J&K. But as we all know, it is a sort of unabating battle which is continuing and which is likely to continue. Now coming to the topic under discussion, it is widely known, all of you are experts as far as knowing the terrorism which is happening in J&K, that the funding of terrorism is one of the most important ingredients of enrolling terrorists and financing terrorism and keeping the terror levels at a level which can be absorbed easily by the international community, and whereby levels don't rise to an extent that Pakistan is targeted to the extent that it stops terrorism. Now, as rightly said, it is a sort of oxygen supply to the terror outfits, and without it, the terrorism cannot survive. As we all know that the main funding which has been coming is routed through ISI. The sources are different. The generation of funding is from different areas at global level, but it is mainly the ISI which is coordinating the entire effort to transfer and ensure that the fund flow to terror outfits, the overground workers continues. We know it very well that the terrorism is still on, the fresh recruitment is still on, the training modules outside the state in Pakistan and inside our union territory are also continuing. Radicalization program, which also requires huge funding, is still on. Payment to the families of killed terrorists, that is continuing. The overground outfits are still getting money. They have a regular establishment, they have their own staff, they have their offices and establishments which require running cost. They have their staff also, they have transport also. Now, all this when and the regular payment to terrorists for operating, all this requires huge funding. And whereas to a common person, it appears to be a matter of great surprise as to how this entire effort is going on despite our best apparatus in place to control the funding. And it becomes sometimes inexplicable for us to satisfy a common man as to why funding cannot get stopped, why it is continuing, why it is so easy for the ISI and Pakistan establishment to ensure that fund flow continues. Now, the terror funding is as commonly known, the first level is the placement level, whereby the money is generated from different sources, whether from genuine sources or from other sources like narco trade and other things, and then placed in different accounts so that it doesn't remain at one place where it can get detected. I'm telling you this because that will help us understand better as to what are the measures which are required to control it finally, to the extent possible. And then the layering of these funds, that is, keep on transferring these funds from one account to another account in a chain, so that if at any point of time some account in the chain is detected, it becomes difficult to trace the origin and the source of the funding. And then comes the third stage, which is known as integration, that is laundering of money. Finally, as has been happening, the terrorists and the overground workers especially have been laundering the money which has been generated. And we know the NIA has done a tremendous job in registering cases against many terrorists and overground workers in J&K. And they are still in jail. We have the persons are known in the terrorist circles, and some of them, like Yasin Malik and others, had gone even to the extent of meeting the Prime Minister in a roundtable conference in the UPA government as a sort of bringing a solution to J&K. That apart, it's a very contentious issue as to how the terrorism, which is basically originating from Pakistan and controlled from Pakistan, and of which the overground workers in J&K are just a part of that, dependent on Pakistan, as to how they could bring peace to J&K. That's a question which is highly debatable, because while we have not been able to address Pakistan to the extent it was desirable, we have been trying to enter into negotiations with these fellows who are basically killers, the Hawala operators, the fund collectors, and movement of funds to terrorists. Now, rightly, the NIA has taken action against them, and many of them are in the jails. And we know how many properties they had raised by laundering this money. Now, coming to some basics of it, as Brigadier Dheman has already pointed out, the narco terrorism is one of the main sources which has been used to fund the terrorism. The role of Pakistan in the narco trade all over the world is very well known. Even the drones have been used by Pakistan to send drugs across the border into India, and for generation of money. The cross LOC trade, which started in 2008 under a sort of joint agreement between India and Pakistan, that again became a big source of transfer of funds for terrorism. And it was very well known that this trade is being misused blatantly with lot of evidence. Cases were registered. The under invoicing of imports into Kashmir and over invoicing of the goods sent across, that was also very well known. And the money generated in the process was being routed to various overground workers and terrorists. That was also well known. Still, we continued with the cross LOC trade for a very, very long time, and it only took a strike like Uri, in 20 army personnel were sacrificed their lives, after which there was rethinking on this, that this source of funding should be stopped because it was going on with the concurrence of Indian establishment. I'm only highlighting it because it shows that we are not very quick and responsive to the needs of our into taking immediate action into any event which is basically generated by enemies across in challenging the territorial integrity of our country. I will briefly also mention here that for most part of the terrorism, for nearly 2 decades, starting from 1990, hardly an effort at the level action should have been initiated. By the level, I mean the central government, obviously. There was hardly any serious action taken in controlling the funding. It was only in 2010 when, due to persistence by our security forces, that some serious thought has to be given to the flow of funds into J&K, that Government of India constituted a committee which was headed by the Director IB and which had its members from most of other revenue dealing departments like the Income Tax Department, then we had the Enforcement Directorate as part of it, the CBI part of it, the Customs and Department, who had the intelligence agencies also, like research and analysis wing as part of it. This committee was constituted. But despite the constitution of committee, unaware of any such serious effort being taken by this committee into collating the intelligence and then trying to take concrete action on the collated intelligence. You know, when we talk about funding, terror funding, financing, we have to understand that the origin of the funding is mostly from outside the country. Whether it is through the money transfer agencies, whether it is through trade, whether it is through the Hajj pilgrims who are returning from Hajj and they carrying packets of money from ISI, whether it was through various NGOs who have now, to our some relief, gone silent, the NGOs whose credentials were known, who were frequently visiting Pakistan for various conferences and become part of the entertainment there. They would enjoy the hospitality of the Pakistani agencies there. Indirectly, though the NGOs would organize those big conferences and other things in Pakistan at other international levels. But basically, the source of financing, as every intelligence agency knew it, was traced to Pakistan. And despite knowing that, our people, the so-called intellectuals and liberals, would go across the globe, trot across the globe, enjoy hospitality in big places of stay, and of course, having a good time, and then returning back, and then trying to, instead of taking on the problem head on, they would start preaching people to people bridges, people to people contact, cultural exchanges, which hardly could give any sort of, which we know, hardly gave any relief to us. You know, if we deal with good countries, with civilized countries, probably these things have some role. But dealing with a rogue country like Pakistan, which unashamedly has been propagating terrorism, spreading terrorism not only in India and Kashmir, but throughout the globe. In most of the terrorist actions which took place at global level, there was some direct or indirect hand of Pakistan. And despite knowing the credentials, some people were always advocating this sort of approach, and still there are lots of people who are coming on the television and propagating this sort of approach that we need to deal with Pakistan in a manner without precipitating the issue. And at that point of time, we'd forget that even small countries like Israel have been largely able to address terrorism by taking firm and effective actions. The European countries have been able to terrorism. The moment some terrorist action took place in their countries, they launched effective measures not only at the security forces level, but at levels which mattered in ensuring that the movement of terrorists, the flow of funds gets stopped. The UK, in fact, you know, once UK started becoming target, they constituted the UK MLIT, that is United Kingdom Money Laundering Intelligence Task Force, which has agencies from some European countries and also their own intelligence and other agencies which can detect the movement of funds. And that agency did a tremendous job in seizing huge amounts, millions and millions of pounds sterlings, which was otherwise going to flow to terrorists. And US, of course, we know after Twin Tower attack, they took very effective measures in controlling. But in India, we have been unfortunately trying to understand terrorism as part of the job of the just security forces on ground, dealing with the terrorists on ground, and try to forget everything else in the process. The oxygen which is sustaining the terrorism, like terrorist funding, we try to ignore, largely because probably we don't want to deal with it or we don't have the means to deal with it. Even country like Sri Lanka has been able to, small country like Sri Lanka has been able to tackle terrorism very effectively and decisively. And a big country like India, and dealing with a small country like Pakistan, which is on the brink of bankruptcy, is not able to finish terrorism for all times to come. Now that apart, we still are in the urgent need of controlling, and it is, as I mentioned in my opening points, that it is very good of Brigadier Dheman that he's organized this conference. And I think the recommendations of this conference should go a long way in case the government of India takes note of these recommendations into ensuring the flow of funds into terrorism. And this problem has become particularly compounded with the use of cryptocurrency, which is being used internationally with least level of detection now. It is all being, this cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and other currencies are being used with impunity to take care of the funding requirements of all sorts of illegal trade. It's not only terrorism in different countries or particularly who are victims of this terrorism, but all sorts of crimes at global level. This currency is getting used, and the world has to awake to it and see how this cryptocurrency can be controlled so that it is not used for illegal purposes and enhancement of criminal activities. Now we have the charity programs also going on in UK, USA, Europe. The Zakat foundations are there. We know the the role of Stand with Kashmir in USA. It has academicians and others also, intellectuals part of it. They generate funds for financing Kashmir terrorism, and that money keeps on flowing to it. And it was only after the constitution of NIA and its and establishment of its branches in different states, including J&K, that we have seen some effective action being taken against financing, and it has registered lots of cases. But still, I feel there is a lot to be done, lot can be done, and by leaving it and just to local police to deal with it, local police. I mean, let me frankly admit here, I was heading the force for 5 years. I found that J&K police just cannot do anything about it. They have no means to go to trace the origins of money. They have no control of power to deal with the international at international level to get to the origin of money. At best, it can trace and arrest the operators who are in J&K, and that's not the end of it. That will not end the problem. So, it required a national investigation agency which has the powers to go and investigate in all states, which can organize raids, arrests in different parts of the country, and also can go with proper liaison with other countries. They can go abroad also and deal with the forums at international level in controlling the flow of funds. I hope NIA constitutes now a special wing to deal exclusively with terror financing. And I'm sure, I think all of you will agree, if fund flow is brought to the minimum, the terrorism in J&K will just collapse. Nobody is going to operate for the ISI in J&K without money. That is for sure. And it's now very necessary that we know the sources. I have listed out some. The means how it is transferred, that's also known. All that is required is now collation, generation and collation of intelligence, translating that intelligence into action, liaising with different countries, putting economic pressure on Pakistan into generating sanctions against them, give more evidence to Financial Action Task Force based in Paris about Pakistan's role in terror financing, so that it goes from grey list to blacklist. It is already under a lot of pressure. In October last year, in 2020, when the virtual meeting was held, last meeting was held, there are still 6 points still outstanding against Pakistan out of 27. They were forced into taking action against people like Lakhvi, Hafiz Saeed, his brother-in-law Makki, and others, and they have put them in prison and sentenced them. Now, greater pressure needs to be brought on them. Then the economic sanctions against Pakistan can include revisiting our Indus Valley Treaty, Indus Water Treaty. The trade, we need to have a relook at the type of trade we are doing with Pakistan and to bring more economic pressure on them. China, of course, will be always trying to help them. They are in liaison with China under CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, where they are supposed to invest more than $62 billion. But of course, China is putting stringent conditions on Pakistan, and like many other countries where China has come to the assistance of countries, but ultimately the fate of those countries is known. The Gwadar port is now already with China. They have taken a port in Sri Lanka also, and likewise they have taken many properties. In Kazakhstan, they have taken over properties which is being mined by them for mining of gold and other precious metals. Now, like that, Chinese expansion plans are known, and Pakistan is going to fall in a debt trap. Their external debt is about $112 billion, US million dollars. Their internal public debt is about $270 billion, which is 107% of their GDP. Now, all this is already putting a lot of pressure on Pakistan. We need to build that pressure into putting Pakistan into severe economic distress. And because of FATF, they are not getting any sort of assistance from World Bank, from Asian Development Bank and International Monetary Fund. We need to we need to redouble our efforts into putting Pakistan into corner. Then we need to develop a lot of diplomatic pressure also. Already a lot has been done. It is not the same situation which was there 10 years back. Pakistan, like OIC, has virtually rejected Pakistan when they wanted OIC to bring resolution against Kashmir, pressure on India on Kashmir. They did not succumb to pressure, and Saudi and UAE particularly have been who have been able to build good diplomatic relations with them, and they have rejected Pakistan and favored us. We need to build more diplomatic pressure on Pakistan. And then, of course, the third aspect of it is the military pressure. That is, of course, the internal operations, the counter-insurgency operations in J&K, particularly in Kashmir Valley, are excellent. The security forces have got excellent results always, and the successes are ever increasing only. But we need to think of taking them on at their bases, at their launching pads, at the training camps, the way it happened in Balakot strikes or the surgical strikes across border in Uri. And we need to be more proactive on that and try to target the wanted terrorists, the global terrorists, and the terrorists who have been operating against our country in their own country, the way Osama bin Laden was taken on by USA. We need to take them on that way. That will put Pakistan pressure on MAD, and that's the only way the terrorism will come to an end in Kashmir. The terror financing will come to an end in Kashmir, and the money laundering which is going on because of this, that will also come to an end in Kashmir. That's all I have to say. I leave it to others now to supplement it, and I'm sure that we have many panelists here. Colonel Singh is there, who is an authority on, he has investigated a lot of cases, and he is a huge source of intelligence in this respect, and others will speak on this. Thank you, Brigadier Dheman. And I only hope that our recommendations, which get generated from here, go into the right hands at the government of India level for action and some results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You enlightened us with all your vast knowledge and vast experience. Whatever you've seen, you covered the stages of insurgency. You also showed us how is the terror financing being done, what are the measures being employed, and how it is happening. And you also showed us what are the inadequacies of the J&K police in this particular subject, and how are they not equipped to do this, and how is NIA is equipped to do that. And you brought out the various aspects. And then you also told us like what all other pressures that we can put up so that Pakistan falls in line and does not create problems for us. So all that you've spoken very well, sir. Sir, meanwhile, just before you go this thing, Christy had a question in the this chat box, sir. How is that the banking system is not being held responsible for the illegal transfer of money in the legal ways? Are there any ways that we can control it, sir?
Absolutely, it's a very relevant question, and again, I might come back to the same point as to how effective and how serious we are taking actions. Like Western Union Money Transfer Agency, that is a very notorious money transfer agency that has come into limelight on several occasions in the past for getting money from places like Saudi and other places, and Europe and US and Canada, UK, and that money going to various people in J&K for financing terrorism. What happened there is that, I'll tell you a unique way in which they were operating. That money will come from abroad, and the persons who were supposed to receive that money in Kashmir were given some code. They will come with that code to that, and no other details were being recorded by this Western Union Money Transfer Agency, and they would just maintain a record that this is all that we have. We don't know where from it has come, and the banking channels would transfer it. And our system at that point of time, NIA was not there the way it is constituted now. It was, I think the bill was passed in Parliament in 2011, and it took us some time to constitute it and make it functional. And now I'm sure that these agencies like NIA can play a very effective role. But I must admit here that we have not been very effective in dealing with the money transfer agencies. Then the banking channels also, of course, it becomes very difficult. As I said, they do the layering, that is transferring money from one account to another account. It gets transferred in a chain to different accounts. And if we don't have very effective means of investigation, the track gets lost, and we reach a dead end where we don't find whether the money has been genuinely transferred or it has come from illegal sources. Normally, this Western Union fellow would say it has come from we arrested some people. They would project that it has come from their relatives who are working in Middle East, and we don't know. He's working there. It must be genuine money. We have no means to verify, and we are not supposed to verify why this money has been sent to verify which has come. These were the practical challenges, and I'm sure Mr. Christie has raised a very valid question. And if you are very serious enough, follow it to the last end, we can make great strides in stopping the fund flow into our country, particularly in terrorist-affected areas like Kashmir.
Thank you very much, sir. That was a very right answer. There needs to be a very practical approach to follow what the other countries in the world are doing, mostly the advanced countries, where this kind of things do happen there as well. But I think their systems are much more, their procedures are much more advanced than ours. And I think we need to take a cue from them. So thank you very much, sir. You enlightened us with a wonderful thing, and I'm really grateful, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Mr. Colonel Singh, who is a seasoned police officer into this field for long years, and he's got a vast experience in J&K, Northeast, Chhattisgarh, and other places. And exactly this is the specialization what he's pursued all his career. So, sir, may I request you to kindly take the discussion forward and enlighten us with more of the things on this particular subject? Mr. Colonel Singh.
Thank you, Brigadier Dheman. I also thank Mr. Kuldeep Khoda, my senior, who has explained it in details about the terrorism, terror financing, and the lacunas which have been there. Let me first explain about the All India scenario in terrorism. First part is the northeastern part of the country, which started right from 1947 in the form of they wanted to get out of India, basically, the separatist movement. But with the passage of time, the government of India is able to convert that separatist movement into the demanding of certain portions. The Mizoram problem was solved in 1987. It became peaceful. Nagaland, there has been a peace accord, and still negotiations are going on. There are peace accords with Manipur also. The Assam problem was sorted out by the government. And now recently the Bodoland also, the problem has been sorted out. The second area of concern is the left-wing extremism, which started in 1967 from the Naxalbari area. It is interesting to note that it started with the demand of the poor people, peasants, and the tribals where the development has not taken place. We had done some cases from the Enforcement Directorate about the terror financing for the Naxals. And interestingly, it was found that a large portion of money goes to the education of their children, the leaders' children of the Naxals. And they are not interested at the moment even for the development. The problem which started for the non-development is taking the toll on the development itself. Now, if the government of India and the state governments wants to develop those areas, wants to build the roads, the same Naxals people stop that. They kill the people, and they are extorting from everyone from there. The third area of concern, first was the Punjab. We know the terrorism started in Punjab in 70s, but ultimately, more or less, it has been controlled. Meanwhile, issues arose in Afghanistan. And USA wanted to use the Pakistan to create, to take help. And there started the jihadi terrorism from the Afghanistan. And the Kashmir problem we were having, as you are all aware more than me, from 1947 itself. When the problem in for the USA, it was getting settled in Afghanistan, these terrorist organizations, Huji particularly, they started coming to the Kashmir and Bangladesh. When they came to the Kashmir in the late 80s, we see the big massacre of Kashmiri Pandits also in that period. And there was a huge movement of terrorism in the early 90s in Kashmir. Jihadi terrorism also started in the rest of India. In the early 90s, there were bomb blasts in trains in near Mumbai. 93, there were also blasts in Mumbai done by Dawood Ibrahim and his group. 97, 98, there were around 42 blasts in and around Delhi, but these were done by the group led by Abdul Karim Tunda, who fled to Pakistan and started working with Lashkar-e-Toiba. At this stage, what Pakistan was doing is it was sending resident agents in our country, various parts like Delhi, Hyderabad, Calcutta, Mumbai, to various parts. Now, these resident agents were the Pakistanis who would settle there and get the Indian identity. After getting the Indian identity, they would marry in India as if they are Indian. They will start a business, and when everything is settled, then the terrorists will start coming from Pakistan. Again, they were most of them were from the Pakistan origin. Then happened 9/11. After the 9/11, the international community woke up saying that yes, terrorism is something every country should act on it. United Nations intervened. FATF, Financial Action Task Force, also took that they had to control terror financing. And Pakistan made the different strategy. It made the strategy that they would provide the finances, but the people who are involved in terrorism should be from the Indian origin. Basic idea was that they wanted deniability to be there. Thus came the formation of Indian Mujahideen, which ultimately, after the Badla House encounter and subsequently Indian forces acting, they were able to annihilate the Indian Mujahideen. So these are the various phases and the terrorism happening in India. Now terrorists need finances, whether they want to make the resident agents, whether they require for their logistics. Even the family members of the people who have been involved in terrorism, they keep getting the funds after funds for managing their families. They require funds for the arms ammunition. They required funds when the stone throwing was taking place in Kashmir. So for a lot of things, they require funds. And from where they get these funds? First, we'll come to that. The first is the drug money. And Mr. Khoda had explained it, but let me go a bit detail. We have on one side of our country golden crescent consisting of Afghanistan, Iran and Pakistan. On the eastern side, we have golden triangle, Thailand, Laos and Myanmar. Opium and heroin at both the places are produced. From Afghanistan, at the borders of Afghanistan, Pakistan, it goes through India. It goes through the other countries also, land route like Kazakhstan and others. But recently they are taking the sea route also. This money goes to Taliban, goes to ISI, and they use it for terrorist purposes. Similarly, from the Golden Triangle, the drug comes to India, and then ultimately the destination is the Western countries, where the margin is huge because of that drug. The Taliban itself is almost getting around $200 million per annum That's a huge margin they are getting for this. Apart from the drug money, if we go to for example, the Naxalites and northeastern India, it is extortion and protection money. Any activity which is taking place in Naxal area, whether it is road construction, whether somebody is doing a business, they have to give cut to the Naxals, otherwise they will not allow them to operate. If one goes to the northeastern area like Nagaland, we have found even the government servant is paying protection money to the Naga insurgents. Even that has happened. Then the Indian Mujahideen, which has operated in India, they were doing kidnapping for ransom. And they had very well planned, elaborate system of kidnapping for ransom. Like they will get a group of criminals, which has nothing to do with terrorism, who will kidnap somebody. They will hand over this kidnapping to another group. Then a person from Dubai, Aftab Ansari, who was heading this Indian Mujahideen in the beginning, he would ring up and negotiate. Money would be delivered in Dubai. And then from there, it will be delivered by Aftab Ansari to his terror outfits in India, and even in Pakistan. Sometimes he has given to the Lashkar-e-Toiba some money also. So that was how Indian Mujahideen was doing. Then there are charity funds which have been explained in details. But let's see, the Lashkar-e-Toiba front is Jamaatul Dawa organizations, which transformed into Falayat-e-Insaniyat. They are collecting funds for charity purposes. They have their own hospitals. They have ambulances. They have schools for education purposes. It appears as if they are doing charity, but a large part of that goes to the terrorism, to the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Similarly, Jaish-e-Mohammed has its own trust, Al-Rashid Trust. They collect charity funds. A lot of Zakat money comes. Now there is an International Islamic Front which collects Zakat funds and send these funds to various countries. In 1999, we had arrested one person, Abu Nasir. He was belonging to Myanmar, but he was working in the International Islamic Front in Pakistan. So when he was caught, he told us that he has been distributing this charity funds to the training institutes in Pak-occupied Kashmir as well as in Afghanistan. See, at that time, even FBI came with a lie detector to Delhi. They interrogated him and they confirmed, yes, this man is telling the truth, where all these charity funds are going. So then we come to the Pakistan itself. See, whatever I was talking, it was about the terrorist organizations themselves getting the funds, or the charity funds are getting diverted. But here comes the state government. We have got some separatist supporters who had coming out of the Pakistan embassy in Delhi and taking the funds from the employees from there. And these funds were supposed to given to, and they had given in the past, to the separatists in Kashmir, and some funds they have given to the terrorists also. So even the embassy was doing and supplying the funds for the separatism and for the terrorists. Then ISI itself, it is involved in the narcotics. The Pakistan was printing the fake Indian currency notes. What they had done is, they had tied up with the same company which was supplying the paper to India. They were getting paper from the same company, ink from the same company, machine from the same companies which India was getting. And therefore the printing of the notes were so fine that even the banks were unable to find what is the difference between the original currency and the fake currency. Only difference they could say is that certain features the RBI changes from year to year. Only somebody expert in knowing those features, that in this particular year, these features were not there, they were able to tell that it is a fake Indian currency. So fine currency was printed. It is only after the demonetization, when the new currencies was printed, we changed the papers, we changed the ink, And thereafter, it has become difficult for Pakistan to print again the similar type of the fake Indian currencies. And that currency was used for terrorist purposes also, proceeds of those currencies. Then ISI is also getting secret funds from the government for operations. Even that is diverted for terror purposes. The crime syndicate of Dawood Ibrahim, which has huge money, he is giving protection money to Pakistan basically. So he stays there safe and sound, but he is giving this money to ISI, which is used in terror financing. So ISI itself is collecting money, giving it to the terror organizations. We have evidences when we have interrogated various people who had attended training camps in Pakistan. The ISI people used to come in training camps and guide them. So there are ample evidence against that. Now, once this terror funding is there, how this terror funding is transferred? We have seen that in most of the cases it was through Hawala. Even the terrorists from Kashmir will come to Delhi, Jalandhar, and even go up to Mumbai. And in one case, they went to Chennai also to collect the Hawala money, so that they go to far off places so that they are not get caught easily. Barter trade, Mr. Khoda has already explained what happens. There are NGOs also which are getting money. It is very difficult to tell that these NGOs are getting money from the good funds or bad funds. But there have been instances that these monies are used for various purposes, for the purposes for which they have not been called for. And therefore, Government of India has changed the law about the getting the money from abroad for NGOs. They have earmarked a bank in Delhi. Only all monies which will come to the State Bank of India Delhi branch, and only then it will go to those NGOs. So that law was amended only for this purpose. Then wire transfer, Mr. Khoda has already told that Western Union has been supplying. We had got one case where the money was coming from Italy. And the Western Union and money comes in very small amount, like 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, so that nobody has a doubt on it. And internationally, it becomes difficult to operate immediately. If we say Italy that this is the money coming, you rate that, they will not do it. So it has to be letter rogatory. We send the letter of request from our country, and subsequently the Italy sent the report that this particular exchange from the money was coming. It was handled by a Pakistani who came to Italy with a fake passport and is not traceable now. So we were not able to get that person in spite of that. Now, cryptocurrency and darknet is another area which can be used. We have not found the evidences, but this is a very, very important areas where the money can be transferred undetected from one country to another country. We have tax havens. Now, Christy asked the questions, the banking channels money flow. Now, tax havens is one of the methods by which the money is cleaned and you don't know from where it is coming. Now, what is done in tax haven is, suppose I want to open an account in tax haven. I have to just go to the internet. There are various websites available. I can contact in the tax havens that I want to open an account. They will ask me, you want to give directors or we'll give you nominee directors? Nominee directors are generally poor people living in those tax havens. They will become nominee director. Then is the shareholders. Who is the shareholders? Then they will ask you whether you want to be shareholder of the company or you want the nominee shareholders. And in some of these tax havens, there was also concept of bearer shares. Anybody who holds the share is owner. Thereafter, these directors will open account in another tax haven. But how I'll get that money? So they will issue power of attorney in my name now. So only the bank will have a record who is actually beneficial owner of that account. Nobody will know. If you ask the papers from anybody, the nominee directors are different, the shareholders are different, company owners are different. And when this money moves from one country to another country, It may be coming from terror funding. Nobody will know it is coming from terror funding. So we have to, if we have to see the banking channel, we have to only try to find out where this money is being used. For example, if we take example of Kashmir, if some money is going to the families of the terrorists, and if it is coming through banking channels, that data can be collected and that data can be used to find out which source it is coming. And if the similar source, the money is going to some other people, that also would be the terror funding. That analysis and examination can be done. Then credit cards. If the credit card is given of such an account, then when one uses any money, nobody will be able to have a doubt on that. Money laundering, Sir Khoda has already explained 3 stages of money laundering: the placement, layering, and the integration. I'll not go into that. Money laundering concept started basically as a concept. It was the long back, but there was prohibition in America, USA, between 1920s and 40. And in that prohibition, the mafia started earning a lot of money in prohibition. So there was a head of one of the mafia, which was known as El Capino. He started a laundromat machine. Laundromat is a machine where the washing is done and you put a coin and you wash your clothes. And from that machine, what he was doing is he was showing more receipt and he was mixing his own money in that. And that's how he was increasing, and money laundering he was doing. Generally, it was very difficult to catch the people who are heading the mafia, because the police is able to catch only the lower ranks who are involved in killing and who are involved in actual operations. In 80s, the investigation is started from Italy. They said that, okay, we are not going to start only the lower portion. We want to find out where the money is going. Various countries cooperated, and there were 2 important trials: Maxi trial case in Italy and Pisa connection case in USA, in which ultimately 350 mafiosos were convicted. Keeping this in mind, that money of the drug mafia should be seized, a Vienna Convention had under United Nations in 1988. And in that it was decided that the countries should cooperate with each other. That was that concept. And the banks should also cooperate with the investigating agency. Thereafter, Basel Committee on Banks took a decision in 1989 that the secrecy laws will not hinder the police investigation. And thereafter, the intergovernmental body, through the G7, Financial Action Task Force, was formed in 1989. Now, FATF role was basically to suggest various countries what laws should be made. They came out with certain recommendations, 40 recommendations in the beginning. Initially, it was only the drug mafia. Subsequently, they added all different crimes, which we call now the predicate crimes or scheduled crime for money laundering. Then happened 9/11. After the 9/11, FATF also included terror financing as its agenda. Today they have 40 recommendations, but they have 11 outcomes. They say that every country should make laws, but those laws should be effective. Like Pakistan has made laws about terror financing and also dealing with money laundering, but they are not implementing them effectively. Then we have intelligence cooperation done through Egmont Group. Each country has financial investigation unit, and they share intelligence between one country to another country. Even before 9/11, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1267 was passed against the Al Qaeda and related entities. After 9/11, 1373 was passed, where the sanctions can be given by the United Nations Security Council against other terrorist organizations. These sanctions require freezing of the assets of the terror outfits, travel ban, and arms embargo. These 3 things were important. Lashkar-e-Toiba there was an embargo on that. There was a sanction against Lashkar-e-Toiba. Pakistan was not implementing that against them. And because of that, this issue was raised in FATF. I was heading the FATF at that time. And in the initial stage, see, it is very difficult to get the cooperation from the other countries. China was supporting them, and most of the countries were neutral because the terrorism in Pakistan is not affecting them. We have a meeting in India where ultimately the National Security Advisor intervened, and thereafter the External Affairs Ministry approached various countries, telling what Pakistan is doing, telling that Pakistan, because of Pakistan, we are getting finances in India, we are getting terrorists in India, we are a whole lot of problems. And as a result, ultimately, Pakistan was put by FATF in the grey list. Now, grey list basically means various countries which are having the financial transactions with Pakistan will be considered to be the high risk country. And therefore, if they are giving any money to Pakistan, they will give at higher interest rates. The question is that whether Pakistan now, India is trying to put into the blacklist, which will have far more effective implications on Pakistan. Pakistan is trying to get out of this. Recently, now February, we have a meeting in the FATF, and the Zakir Rahman, who was involved in the 2611 Mumbai, they have arrested him just to show that they are taking action. They have been doing this in the past also, but we must ensure that the Pakistan comes to the blacklist, because international pressure being put on Pakistan is, everybody is knowing there that Pakistan is a rogue country, and that will help India. I'll stop at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You've given us a very in-depth analysis of the origin of insurgency at various places and how the drug money is being operated in those things, how things happen in Dubai, how the charity funds are transferred, how the embassy of Pakistan was doing, and what all Hawala channels we're using, various credit cards, Western Union, etc. And you also told us about the FATF, how it got involved, and what all implications does it have, and the various United Nations security resolutions and all. So we are really enlightened and thankful to you for all that information.